Ladies and gentlemen, it's not every day that a new player comes into the scene that has the potential to shake the very industry of the chess world. And today, I want to go over one such player, 13-year-old Andy Woodward. All right, he's an international master who's recently earned his Grandmaster norm. He has a 3,000 rating at the age of 13 years old. This kid is the next wonder kid, and many people claim he could be the next Magnus Carlsen. Well, the next Magnus Carlsen was able to match up against the current Magnus Carlsen, all right? And this is one of the games they played. I decided to go ahead and pick it out. His name is Philippians 46, which, if you want to go ahead and look it up, I will save you the trouble. It reads, worry not about anything. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Um, a verse that you're going to probably want to remember against Magnus Carlsen, right? But he's 13 years old. It's nice to see, like, a young kid in this day and age of, like, players having, like, 69 everywhere. Like, kid's got a good head on his shoulders, so, all right. You're going to need that if you're going up against Magnus Carlsen. So, Magnus opens with the white pieces here, and Andy has the black pieces. He responds with the Sicilian defense, and Magnus decides to play the Alpine Sicilian. He responds with an aggressive d5. And now, this is what you'll see top players do. They'll mess around with theories so much just to end up in the same positions that openings normally do. They just test each other, seeing which move order they want to take, deciding which flow of the position. Here, they both have loose pawns hanging. Whichever pawn gets captured, material will even out, so neither side is too worried. But Magnus does manage to get one pawn in the center versus black's 0 pawns, and that's a huge advantage as the black queen is misplaced and gets kicked back here. Now, Andy was probably thinking Magnus would recapture and go into the endgame where he was much stronger, but instead Magnus captures and doubles up the pawns, something you generally don't want to do because it weakens up the king's safety or should you ever castle short. And so Andy doesn't realize that after bishop to e3 here and knight to d7, there's actually a very, very, very weak square on black's position that Magnus is going to exploit. This is what Magnus does. He finds weakness in your position and he just exploits it until you have to either focus all your energy and exploit on defending that weakness, right? It's like plugging a leaky boat. Once you stop one leak somewhere, another leak pops up. So Magnus first kicks the queen, grabbing more space by pushing the pawn to d5, and now he plays knight to b5. Black can't capture this pawn because he falls prey to a royal fork on c7. Now the queen falls under attack, and black is threatening, or white is closing in on the c7 square. Andy deflects his queen to e5, trying to centralize his queen and pin the dark square bishop. Magnus says, I don't care. I'm going to up the pressure on c7 and play against your uncastled king here. And now Andy's forced to play e6. Now this is interesting, right? The computer actually recommends black's best move as king to d8. And there's no doubt in my mind that Andy saw this, but this is like one of the things that like jumps out, right? He didn't want to play king to d8, even if it was the best logical move, because he wanted a fighting chance of playing pawn to e6. This gave him the best fighting chance to continue forward, and it's this mindset at a very young age that it's like, it's nice to see. It's nice to see the fight, especially when going up against Magnus. But nonetheless, Magnus is much better here as he goes ahead and wins the exchange. He's temporarily up a full rook, but now Andy's e6 idea is revealed as it opens up a diagonal for the dark square bishop, and he comes in and attacks the white king on e1. And now there's no way for the white king to deflect other than with the rook, just losing the exchange that black had lost. So white is forced to move his king to e2, and now white's king safety is a little up in the air. There's knight f4 ideas, but white is still better, and if he can trade the queens off and liquidate the material, he'll be much better in the endgame, and it should be winning. Magnus knows this, so he seeks to trade material off, offering the queen trade. Andy also knows that he needs to keep the queens on the board, so he deflects his queen away, but the computer considers a gigantic mistake, and now it just has white as being much better. But Andy decides to fight on here. Queen takes d6, and the queens do come off the board. Andy's down the exchange here against Magnus Carlsen, the greatest in-game chess player of all time. This is all but resignable. There should be absolutely no way of winning, but Magnus is in time trouble here, all right? And Andy decides to fight on, and all of a sudden, after the dust settles and all these pawns come off the board, we see black with a very, very fast h-pawn on the outside, and while he's still down the exchange, the h-pawn falls off the board. The black king is able to come to the center of the board. The pawns are able to form a nice little formation. And all of a sudden, Magnus is in a little bit of trouble as the h-file belongs to the black rook. The black rook's going to come to h2, or rook on the 2nd or 7th rank if you're white, is very powerful. And all of a sudden, white's king is falling into potential checkmating threats. The white pawns on A and B are unstoppable, but they're not faster than the checkmating threat that's facing white's king. White decides to just sacrifice the exchange and claim that the two pawns are faster, but now the game is almost even. After pawn to A6, black's even a little bit better because he has this brilliant idea, bishop to E3. The pawn can't capture because the rook would just capture the king. It's pinned. And after bishop to E1, pawn to G3, Magnus all of a sudden panics and he's like, wait a minute, I was winning this game easily. What just happened? Pawn takes F2, rook to B4 check, bishop to D4. This game is going down to the wire. Now Magnus blunders with bishop to C3, and Andy does not make a mistake. The pawn is all of a sudden going to queen. This F pawn is insanely fast out of nowhere, and after rook takes D4 check, pawn takes D4, king takes F2. Magnus tries to go for the two pawns versus rook, but the pawn is just too fast, and now Andy queen's just one move in front of Magnus, but it's enough. Queen to E6, and Magnus runs out of time here before the eventual checkmate follows. And they played several games. This was just one of the ones I wanted to highlight, as it was a very impressive game and a very resilient effort by a very young and talented grandmaster. I can't wait to see what he does in the future.